gangs in El Dorado County. I can't look you in the eye and tell you that we don't have gangs here. But our strong philosophy on gangs is identification, validation, and prosecution. So most of our gang members are transient. So they're coming from Rancho Cordova, Carmichael, South Sacramento, and whatnot. That's why I'm really concerned about the freeway, the JPA. That's going to bring a back door right from South Sacramento, right in Galt, or Elk Grove and Galt and all that, right into our back door right here. So most of our gang issues are transient. So what do? As soon as we learn of a gang member, we have it's a collateral gang assignment that our deputies have. So the first thing we do is identify them, find out who these knuckleheads are, what are they doing, where they're at, and then we get them validated. So just somebody saying that they're a gang member doesn't make them a gang member. You have to validate them with tattoos, with monikers, with who they're hanging out with colors they're flying and whatnot. We get them all validated. Then after they're validated, when they cross the line, then we use that validation for any type of prosecution enhancements that our DA can use, and we hammer them. And the word is out, don't get in trouble in El Dorado County, because they hammer you pretty hard. So they do a pretty good job of staying down there. Now, they also do a lot of transient crime up here, and it's not just gang members, but other knuckleheads. And that's part of the biggest problems we see with those type of transient crimes. So your vehicle burglaries, your porch pirates. We were having a huge ring of catalytic converter thefts. All those suspects were from Sacramento. They were all down the hill. Whenever we catch one of them, they were always from down there. So that's something that we keep in mind. Yes, sir.
Hiring. Do you have problems hiring? Is it difficult to hire new deputies?
Yes. Statewide, we're having a heck of a time hiring right now. We had, how many today? Vacancies?
We're down 16 today.
16 deputies today out of 168 sworn personnel that we have in the agency. And it's not just deputies. It's hard to hire dispatchers. It's hard to hire sheriff's techs. It's hard to hire everybody.
So we'd
For
be facing the same problem.
You would be facing the same problem. The reasons that we're facing it are multiple. One of them is it's generational. I look around in this room, we're all of age. We were all raised that the decisions you make today can and probably will affect you the rest of your life. For whatever reason, this new generation, they don't think that way. And they do some stupid stuff. And then when it comes time to filling out a background packet, and we find out about that stupid stuff, they can't understand why we won't hire them. But we can. We have very high standards, as do nearly all agencies across the state. When you lower your standards is when you have problems. And a perfect example of that is LAPD in the 70s, when they were having a hard time hiring for, number one, hiring across the board, and they were having a hard time hiring minorities to fill their affirmative action numbers or whatever they were. So they lowered their standards. What happened about a decade and a half after that? They had Rampart, where a whole division of their sheriff's office went bad. That's what happens when you lower your standards. You can't do that, so we don't. So literally, out of hundreds of applications for whatever position, from correctional officer to deputy sheriff, we'll hire 2 or 3. That's how difficult it is. And then another issue we have here, not so much in our deputy sheriff classification, because our deputy sheriff salaries are based on a county charter section 504. Our deputy salaries are an average of the comparison of South Lake Tahoe Police Department, Amador County Sheriff's Office, and CHP. That was passed by the voters back in the 70s as Measure A. Back then, the sheriff was having a heck of a time. The Deputy Sheriff's Association, they were at the bottom of the barrel. They were up to 3rd step deputy sheriff qualified for the first food stamp programs. that came out. So when they passed the measure, they used middle of the road agency, South Lake Tahoe. They used a low agency, Amador Sheriff's Office, and they used a high agency, CHP. So they get paid an average, and it works. Board of Supervisors doesn't like it because they can't control it, but it works. And I'm afraid that they're going to try and open up that can in the near future because they can't control it. And I believe the voters in El Dorado County, it will backfire on them, because if they play their cards right, meaning the Deputy Sheriff's Association with the community, those three agencies aren't even our competitors. We lose deputies to Placer County, Folsom PD, and Sacramento. So if you want to use the average of those, then the Board of Supervisors is going to shoot themselves in the foot. The other issue with some of our civilian staff, and especially our dispatchers, we just lost 3 dispatchers in the last 30 days. They went to Folsom PD. It was an immediate $15,000 a year raise. So, but yeah, it is hard to hire. Yes, sir.
Could you talk a little bit about the neighborhood watch program, the STAR program?
Sure. We have one of our stars here with us today. Our stars is our sheriff's team of active retirees. They are fantastic. They're literally things that get done that would not get done without our stars, period. Every year they put in over 20,000 hours of volunteer service. They do things such as our YANA program, You Are Not Alone, where they call our shut-ins in our community every day. If they don't answer the phone, we send a deputy for a welfare check. They do the mail run for the county over the hill into the Tahoe Basin and back every day. They man our substations. Our stars man your El Dorado Hills substation down here in town center. You see them at all different events, parking cars, helping people, manning different booths, doing this and that. They patrol our neighborhoods. They work and set up with communities for the Neighborhood Watch program. And the Neighborhood Watch program is extremely valuable if the neighborhood is involved. And I say that because the community will start a Neighborhood Watch program. They'll have a block party. Everybody will get involved. Everybody will put their Neighborhood Watch signs out. They'll have their sign-ups in the first 2 or 3 months. Everybody's involved. And their community is safe. No knuckleheads want to come in, because the first thing that happens is the block captain or somebody's getting a phone call and they're calling us, and we're there and we're running all the knuckleheads out. It's great, it works. But then what happens is typical complacency sets in and the Neighborhood Watch program just goes away. But when they work wonderfully. Yes, sir.
Going back to the budget process, and thank you for doing it every year for us. If a service contract to provide service to a municipality, that'll be a new experience for the department, correct? We haven't done anything else yet.
Right.
So what does that budget process, the effect of that budget process, if you have a service contract and you have X dollars coming in, can the Board of Supervisors step in and say,
No.
budget-wise?
No, you set those contracts up, they stand alone.
Okay.
They stand alone. So, and I've asked some of my peers, Alameda County has, I don't know how many contracts with police departments. That is a contract between the city and the county for whatever police services included in that contract. So it can't be subverted, it can't be supplanted, it can't be anything else. It's for that.
You
But that's
sign
a-
off on it as a sheriff, it's between the sheriff's department and the city.
The contract is actually between the county and the city. The sheriff's office agrees to sign on to the contract. But the contract is actually between the city and the county. I don't have the ability to contract, to encumber, those funds. I'm saying that wrong.
No.
The county gets them, they're allocated to the sheriff for the services contracted to the city. But I don't have the ability to do that with the city on my own.
Could the County encumber you with a bad contract for your department? Is that-
No, because I'm part of the process and I have to sign off on it.
Okay.
I'm at the table.
Very good.
But that's a very good point, because that happened when the casino came in. Then Sheriff Jeff Neves, one of his biggest gripes, he was not part of that conversation when the county set up the contract with that casino. And it was not a very thought out contract. It was $500,000 to the sheriff's office every year. But what was agreed upon for service was $643,000 worth of service a year. So there was $143,000 encumbrance or encroachment on the sheriff's budget for the service that was promised in that contract. But that wouldn't happen during this. Yes, sir.
There are some people who have said that El Dorado Hills area is a cash cow for the entire county. Whether or not that's true, we don't know. But what portion of your budget is funded through the taxes that El Dorado Hills pays? I was gonna email you that question yesterday because.
So I can have two numbers for you? So I'm not sure what percentage of El Dorado Hills is of the county's entire budget. I would say, depends on where you draw the line. I would say that El Dorado Hills has to be somewhere between 30 to 40% at least of the county's budget. Have you ever looked at those numbers?
Don Ashton, who's the chief administrative officer for the county, was here speaking to the chamber.
Okay.
And he said that the number was 28%, but it didn't include some other things, whatever those are.
Okay, so let's say it's 35%. If you're 35% of the entire general fund, you have to do the math to find out. But we are roughly of the entire general fund. I think we're 23 or 24% of the unallocated general fund.
I know that
The
in
general
the
fund.
city, the safe house is going to require revenue neutrality.
Over time.
That's LAFCO.
That would affect how much we would be able to pay for safety services.
Well, on revenue neutrality, that's the phase-in time, right? From between when you start your cityhood, the taxes paid to the county by all the taxpayers that are now within the city. Pretty soon that comes and that does all this, right? It swaps sides.
Typically 25 years.
25 years, 20 to 25 years. I think Sutter Creek was 20 years.
The last proposal for this city, in financial analysis, it was 25 years, approximately $900,000 to $1 million a year.
Yeah, so I think that the numbers would have to be really looked at, and that neutrality, as it attracts itself over from the county to the city, that would be part of the budget negotiations as to what portion the city is paying for over and above what they would normally get to start, what they want on a program, and then that would be, for lack of a better term, amortized through that attrition process under neutrality until it becomes totally the city's cost. That make sense?
Yep.
No? I got some eyes
More so
rolling.
than some of the other explanations.
What's that?
More so than some of the other explanations.
So I had some eyes that weren't getting it. So let's make some round numbers. So let's say right now, out of the entire county, the sheriff's office entire budget, we'll make it easy. Make it 50 million. Say 15 million is spent in the city of, or in the area that would be the city of El Dorado Hills. 15 million over the entire year. So that would be the number you would start off with. The residents of El Dorado Hills would still be paying whatever they're paying in taxes. It starts off with all that money goes to the county. Even after when you become a city, all that money starts going, it still goes to the county. And then over time, say it's 15 years, it starts reverting back to the city. So say, make it easy numbers, 15 million, 15 years, $1 million a year goes back to the city, okay? But somewhere at the beginning of that, you're gonna want more of a home rule, you're gonna want more service, and you're gonna direct some of those dollars to be added to that. So instead of saying 15, you want $20 million worth of service. So that means 5 million of, you're gonna have to come up with 5 extra million somewhere to build up those police services.
Well, yeah, but the income to the city increases as soon as it incorporates, because it starts getting different funding sources.
Yes, but your obligation to the county
Sure,
stays the
sure,
same.
sure. Yeah.
Until it trips out.
But your income doesn't decrease. Your
No, I'm not saying that it decreases.
No, so you're
And that's
paying
another
them
thing
out.
too. Under the neutrality, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, under neutrality, that, once that starts, that's static. So any increases that the city has during that time is all for the city. It doesn't
That's correct.
relate to the county.
It's an agreed upon 25 years for X amount of dollars. Now,
Right.
so the question comes up to me is, and I have many, is that what comes first, chicken or the egg? Okay, so you're talking about a city making a contract with the sheriff's department, and that's the way Steve Ferry sees it as, okay? But who negotiates all this? I mean, LAFCO is involved in the negotiations for basically the county. But who's negotiating for this city?
Well, it's not a yesterday and tomorrow. There's a time frame that goes on in there. You have an election, you have a city council.
Whoa, but wait a minute. We don't even know if it's feasible yet.
Well, of course not.
Okay, so there's my point. There's where the chicken and egg comes in. Okay, so you gotta have this feasibility study financially.
Oh, sure.
Okay? Then you have to have people who, I don't know where they're coming from, okay, to sit down with LAFCO, okay, and present all of this, either petition.
But that's not when the contract is negotiated for law enforcement.
That's my question. It's not negotiated then?
No.
You have no authority, you're not a city.
No.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, okay, so in the interim, until we actually become a city and elect the officials, then they negotiate with you.
As I understand it, correct.
Okay.
You mentioned additional revenue. Where does the additional revenue come from? Steve?
That's not my question.
Well, you mentioned the additional revenue. Yes, and it's Steve's area. Steve and Chris Nicholson. It's not my area, but I'm told. Isn't this correct?
Let me just say it from the start. I'll put that camera down. We have film that'll be on our website, so you can take a look at this again. Jose, you're here. Great. If there's any questions up here that you could throw a thought
I
in.
did want to clarify what that gentleman had said. My name is Jose Enriquez, I'm the executive officer for LAFCO.
He is the LAFCO guy, so I mean, he's the real deal.
LAFCO is a neutral party. So we would not be negotiating on behalf of the county. The county would be negotiating on its behalf. The people who would negotiate on behalf of the proposed city of El Dorado Hills would be the incorporation committee. So to walk through the process, there's a comprehensive fiscal analysis that's supposed to take a snapshot of the available revenues that would be there for a new city and the costs that the county is currently spending in the area of the proposed city of El Dorado Hills. So that gives us the revenues and that gives us the expenses. So to the sheriff's explanation, which by the way, I think was probably one of the best explanations I've heard of the revenue neutrality negotiations that I've heard. You're gonna have to negotiate, for lack of a better term, a divorce deal. Because there are services that the county currently provides that the city would then pick up. But there are also expenses that the county will continue to spend on the new city, such as the district attorney, the courts, the health and human services. Those services continue to be provided by the county. So the county still has to provide X number of services with diminished revenues because some of those revenues would stay with the city. So in that divorce deal, you're doing two things simultaneously. you're setting up what the terms are gonna be to make the county whole as part of the revenue neutrality. But then you're also setting up what revenues are gonna be coming into the city for the city to pick up its own services. So it's a dual thing going on. And the incorporation committee representatives, they're not elected.
That's my point.
Okay, they're not
Exactly.
elected.
That's
But they-
exactly.
But they're the ones who set up those negotiations. Once the city gets up and going, you're gonna have an interim agreement with the county so that you're gonna hand off certain services. The sheriff's department would be, law enforcement would be part of them, the permitting process would be another. And then it would be up to that new city council to then set up a formal agreement that will be in place for the city from that point forward. Does that make sense? So, LAFCO starts the process, and LAFCO can intervene if the negotiations stall. But for the most part, it's between the proponents and the county.
And those proponents, and this is where I have a bug with it, is they negotiate for us, the people that voted for it, say. Okay?
Well, but they do have some, they do have, yeah, it's in the interim for one, it's not a binding agreement, but it's also, you have to understand, the incorporation process is launched through a registered voter petition. So you have a certain number of electorate who have entrusted those individuals to carry that proposal forward. I'm not, I'm not advocating that they are the true representatives, because obviously you don't have a city council set up yet.
Right.
But there is some legitimacy that they're the ones who are stewarding this process of turning a community into a city, if that's the direction that the city wants to go. Ultimately, the citizens have a vote. If they negotiate poorly on your community, it does go to an election. That's what happened back in 2005. The citizens still have the authority to say, no, we don't like this, and we'll remain a community within the county, and it's an unincorporated community.
According to your application here, there's application by petition and application by resolution.
Yes.
So the committee has to decide which way they want to go. And there's
Yes.
special requirements required and all that.
Yes. And to your question about the resolution by application, it could be another agency that launches it. It could be the El Dorado Hill CSD. That board is also elected by the folks here.
That's elected.
It could be the County Board of Supervisors, that's what they did to revive the 2003 incorporation effort, and that was done on behalf of the community. So there's still some elected officials who do it even by that resolution, by a resolution of application. So there is some citizen involvement here within that process.
That would be a petition.
Through a registered voter petition, yes.
Right.
Now, what I've advocated with my presentation, even though it's a shorter process to go by a resolution of application through another agency, my recommendation is to go through the registered voter process, simply because that gives you a proxy of the level of support that's in the community. Because if you can't gather 25% of your fellow citizens to launch that petition, that should tell you what the level of support is, without investing any money and without investing any more time.
So my question to you, Steve, is with your committee, have you people, I don't want myself to be recorded, and I think you should have told everybody that you're recording. You didn't tell us. Okay, you did that the very first